So now let's talk about the probability rules, the basic rules. The first one you probably know. Probabilities are typically displayed as percentages, so they must be between 0 and 1. Something cannot happen less often than never, and it certainly cannot happen more often than always. This rule is related to the previous one in that if you consider all the things that could happen, all of the things that could happen are all of the outcomes of an event. If we do something simple like flipping a coin, that's the experiment. The outcomes are heads and tails. So if we think about the probabilities of those outcomes, heads and tails, and we add them up, 50% plus 50%, they sum to 1. Well, that's not just a fluke. That must happen. If we sum up the probabilities of everything that could happen, it must sum to 1. So what if we were playing cards and we wanted to know, well, how likely are all these suits? There are 4 suits: hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs. So if we were to sum up the likelihood of all of the suits, that would be 1/4 of the time hearts, 1/4 of the time diamonds, 1/4 of the time spades, 1/4 of the time clubs. Well, that's 100%. So this is another property of experiments and events and probability. If you sum everything up, it must sum to 1. It's a good check to make sure you have incorporated all of the outcomes. Another rule that's nice to have in handy is the complement rule. The complement rule is not so much opposites. If you look at the figure, we have the blue circle. And let's say the blue circle is what we're interested in. We're interested in outcome A. Well, then there's still the possibility that A doesn't happen. That's A exclamation point. So the black box is everything. A is clearly inside of everything. But if we add A to A exclamation point, that's totaling everything up. So if we were to add those together using the previous rule, it would sum to 1. But how can we use that to figure out how likely is it that something doesn't happen? So let me put this in words. Let's say the outcome that we know is left-handedness. So let's just say I know how likely it is to be left-handed. What I don't know is how likely it is to not be left-handed. The way to figure that out is to use the complement rule. So if we rearrange what we know, I know that if I take the likelihood of being left-handed and I add it to the likelihood of not being left-handed, I know that must sum to 1. But I could rearrange that and calculate the likelihood of not being left-handed by taking 1 minus the likelihood of being left-handed. So this complement rule comes in handy. We will use it from time to time. I will pass you on to a few other detailed videos to look into the addition rule and then the multiplication rule.